Peace be with you. It's evening, about between 6:30. It's actually 7 o'clock, 7:01 on 19th of April, 2020, 2020. And this is the video 13 or 12, I don't know, 12, 13, whatever the next one is. It's actually chapter 7 of the book. And the name of this one is called Meeting Stephen, as in Stephen Gaskin. You'll hear about him. Leaving college and feeling a draft. Excuse me. Sorry, I should have done this before a little Marco Rubio thing there for those who watched him. Okay. Chapter 7, Meeting Stephen, Leaving College and Feeling a Draft. It was the winter of 1970. My final undergraduate semester was about to begin. I was becoming more and more disillusioned with my graphic design advertising education. They saved the worst coursework for last, and by worst I did not mean the hardest, but the worst. I was introduced to subliminal seduction, the art and science of psychologically manipulating minds to buy something based on an attractive package, even if the customer didn't need it, even if it was not good for people. I was learning about colors, shapes, fonts, and other components of the graphic toolbox and how to use them to get people to buy, consume, They taught us that the Tide laundry detergent box was the best example of subliminal selling because it uses the color orange and a concentric circular design associating with the sun and sunlight, or source of life. The subliminal seduction goes deep. And even though Tide is mostly fillers that do not clean our clothes, maybe nowadays they make a better product because people are more hip to the hype, they were for a very long time the best-selling laundry detergent on the market, in large part due to the packaging. And this is what I was working towards? As they say in New Jersey, forget about it. This was going on before computers, cell phones, or any of what people nowadays think is necessary to live. Cutting and pasting involved an X-Acto knife and rubber cement. Copying involved a separate machine and carbon paper, and so on. But the truth is always the truth, and the hype, the lie, is always a lie, no matter at what operating level of low, medium, or high technology the society may be. This made me sick, to think that I had gone through 3.5 years of college, all those required courses, all those elective courses, only to find near the end of the rainbow a dung heap of propaganda I had to traverse in order to attain the coveted degree that would be my passport to a decent job in graphic design and advertising in the real world, so I could feed, clothe, and house myself and predictable mate, reproduce, so there would be more drones ready to be programmed into the system. I was bummed out about this rude awakening to the world of advertising graphic art, to say the least. I learned later that the Tavistock Institute, the ones who had choreographed, the ones who had choreographed the hippie movement of the 60s, something I did not realize until 40 years later, were also heavily involved in mass marketing to the public. Sigmund Freud was Tavistock's guru, and his nephew, Edward Bernays, is considered the founder of public relations, a nice way of saying propaganda minister to society. These guys have manipulated minds on a global scale for over a century, from government to corporate America to higher education and so on. In the last 50 years, since I was in college, much has changed, not just technologically, but in the increased public awareness and social consciousness that brought with it. Higher technology and access to more information because of it has made society much more savvy about product quality, health, environment, and all the rest of the matters that affect our lives. More and more people are also awakening to the realization that we all have been and are being played. I am grateful that Allah gave me the inspiration to avoid being part of continuing the bad old ways just to make a living. He has always inspired me to seek the truth and work for it in all endeavors from personal to global. In January 1971, something happened that altered the course of my life in a major way. Some of the folks who lived in our Missouri commune had traveled to California and had come back with information about a man named Stephen Gaskin. Stephen had been a U.S. Marine in the Korean War who had had an epiphany, traded his weapon for a stretcher on a hill during combat, and began to work to save lives instead of trying to take them. He returned home and became a teacher of linguistics at San Francisco State College. During the Haight-Ashbury days in San Francisco, the Vietnam era of the 60s, when many college-age people were on the street turning on, tuning in, and dropping out, getting high, seeking peace, Stephen decided to trade in his suits and ties for jeans and turtlenecks. We're getting there. For jeans and turtlenecks. Be right with you. Sorry. Out on the street and talk to people. He had a great gift for expressing ancient teachings in the vernacular, the language or dialect spoken by the ordinary people in a particular country or region. In this case, 20th century, 60s hippie America, to reach that audience. He spoke the language of his times to transmit many eternal lessons of life taught in the major religions, and he was well received by the people who sought those lessons, the disaffected young of America, who were but a few steps away from becoming cannon fodder in the Vietnam War. Many of us could not relate to the time-worn ways it was being expressed in more organized spiritual paths, religions. His communication skills were so impressive that a Methodist church organization helped him to arrange a national speaking tour. Up until then, he had been holding what had become known as Monday night class at a local auditorium in San Francisco, and over time it became full to capacity. He was connecting with people in a unique and needed way, and he was attracting thousands. It was the year of the Kent State Massacre, where on Nixon's watch, 4 college students were shot dead for simply protesting the Vietnam War. Stephen's presence on the road, in a caravan of school buses converted into hippie motorhomes touring the country, sent a peaceful, calm vibe wherever they went and wherever he spoke. It would not be presumptuous to say that because of the grace of Allah and Stephen's caravan tour in 1971, lives were saved from being destroyed by an out-of-control, corrupt, dominant order. Years later, I visited Kent State University with my older son when we were looking at schools for him. Kent State is in the middle of miles of Ohio cornfields. There was no need to kill anyone out there who was protesting the war. No one would have even known they were protesting if the media hadn't hyped it. Except that this was supposed to be a place where that sort of thing was not supposed to happen, in the country's breadbasket. Maybe in Berkeley or Antioch, somewhere like that, but not Kent, Ohio. So they sent in the National Guard and 4 students were shot dead. When the caravan tour plans were first coming together and he told his faithful Monday night class students he was going to go on tour, many who had been listening to him for a while wanted to come along. So they converted many school buses into Conestoga wagons on wheels, and off they went around the country on the speaking tour that brought Stephen to Columbia, Missouri in January 1971, where I met and heard him for the first time. His bus read out on the destination screen over the windshield that usually says a city or street name, "Out to Save the World." I went to the Columbia event and listened to the man. It was the first time I ever got high, as in a feeling of holiness, as in God Most High, not the media canned stupid kind of high, from just listening to someone talk. I could physically feel changes taking place in my brain as he talked, the result being what is now referred to as defragmentation, or defrag computer talk, when trash files are dumped, wasted space is consolidated, and files are generally put in order. That was how his presence and his words affected me. He talked about how real vibrations are and how they affect us, and how we can control our own vibrations by attuning ourselves to the eternal values taught by the ancient masters, prophets, and messengers. He talked about the power of truth. He said weed doesn't get you high, the truth gets you high. I knew he was telling the truth because I had smoked really good weed with folks who were not being straight and felt very